Think about the last time you got angry. Not what made you angry, the way you got angry. Whether you said the thing or swallowed it whole. You didn't choose that shape. It just came out the same way it always comes out. Now, ask yourself who you were watching the first time you learned that that's how it's done. And then ask yourself how old you were. Albert Bandura had one question. Are you actually who you think you are, or just a recording of everyone you ever watched? So he did what any reasonable person would do. He built a room. The children were between 3 and 6 years old, pulled from the Stanford University Nursery School in 1961. Each one was brought in alone, sat in one corner with stickers and stamps to keep them busy. Across the room, an adult they had never met sat down with a Tinker Toy set, a mallet, and a 5-foot inflatable clown, weighted at the base so it bounced back upright every single time it got knocked down. For the first minute, the adult played quietly with the toys, assembled pieces, ignored the clown completely. Then they stood up. For the next 10 minutes, they attacked it, punched it in the nose, sat on it, hit it over the head with the mallet, threw it across the room, kicked it while it was still on the ground, and talked through all of it out loud. Sock him in the nose, kick him, hit him down. Then they stood up, walked out, and left the child alone in the room as if none of it had happened. The child wasn't taken to the clown yet. First, they were walked somewhere nicer, a different room, full of exactly the things a 3-year-old spends a whole car ride asking about: a fire engine, a toy train, a doll set. 2 full minutes with all of it. Then a researcher came back and explained that those toys were reserved for other children. The child had to stop, couldn't touch them anymore. Then, frustrated, they were walked into a third room. The Bobo doll was in the corner. 90% of the children who had watched the adult attack it walked straight in and started hitting. Same punches, same sequence, same words coming out of their mouths. They sat on it the way the adult had. Swung the mallet at the same spot, threw it the same direction. The researchers watching through the one-way mirror could follow along like they had a transcript. Every move accounted for. The children who had watched a different adult, one who sat in the same room with the same clown and never touched it at all, barely went near it. Same room, same doll, same frustration going in, completely different behavior coming out. The only thing that separated them was 10 minutes of watching someone else. At the time, psychology had a clean explanation for how behavior works. You do what gets rewarded. You drop what gets punished. Nobody is born knowing how to act. You're shaped slowly, through direct experience, cause and effect, one consequence at a time. It was called behaviorism, and it had controlled the field for 40 years. It had an answer for almost everything. It didn't have an answer for what Bandura had just watched happen. A 4-year-old had never once said, "sock him in the nose" in their life. No one taught them to say it. No one rewarded them for saying it. No one even asked them to remember it. They'd heard it once from a stranger in a room they'd been sitting in for 10 minutes. And it came back out of them, word for word with the right move attached to it. The whole theory had just cracked on one inflatable clown. But what the experiment is actually remembered for isn't even the 90%. It's what the children said while they were watching. A boy watching the male model beat the clown looked over and said, "He's a good fighter, like Daddy." A girl watching the female model said, "Ladies shouldn't behave that way." They weren't blank recorders. They were sorting, comparing what they saw to every adult they already knew, deciding in real time which behaviors applied to them and which didn't, tagging it all, filing it, building a private rulebook for when it might be appropriate to use what they'd just taken in. The behavior didn't just enter them. The question Bandura had next was, how long does it stay? And what actually brings it back out? In 1963, he ran the follow-up. Except this time, he added different endings. In some versions, after the adult attacked the clown, another adult came in and praised them for it. In others, the adult got told off. In others, nothing happened at all. The children who saw the model punished imitated far less than the others. That looked like confirmation. Punishment suppresses, reward reinforces. The old theory holds after all. Then Bandura offered every child a small reward, just to show him what the adult had done. Every child who had watched, no matter what their model's outcome had been, reproduced the full sequence. Every move, every phrase, in order, including the children who had barely imitated anything at all in the room. They knew every bit of it. They had just decided not to show it. They hadn't failed to learn. They had learned everything. They just hadn't performed it yet. That gap between what a person has absorbed and what they're currently showing is the thing the study actually proved, and it is considerably more unsettling than the headline number. A child can take in an entire pattern of behavior, show no visible sign of it, and then produce it in full the moment conditions feel right, the moment it feels normal, or like something the people around them would recognize. The behavior is sitting there the whole time, just waiting for the right room. Bandura's paper came out in 1961, and it arrived at exactly the moment no one was ready for it. American families had been getting their first televisions through the 1950s. By the early 1960s, lawmakers, broadcasters, and parents were already fighting over whether violence on screen made children more violent off it. Bandura's results became the most cited piece of evidence in that debate, by both sides at the same time for the next 6 decades. Researchers who believed media violence caused real harm cited it. Researchers who said the effect was too weak to matter cited it back. The argument was never settled. It's technically still open today, but nobody in that debate stopped to ask the thing underneath it. Not what a child absorbs from a screen, what a child absorbs from a room, from the specific people already inside it, from 10 years of watching every day without a camera running, without a one-way mirror, without anyone keeping notes, from a parent who went quiet in a specific way, from someone who raised their voice in a specific shape, from the version of the people they loved most that showed up when things went wrong, and sorted and filed and tagged for later, without ever knowing that's what they were doing. Those children in Bandura's lab had a mirror. Someone was watching. You didn't get that. You got 10 years of the real thing in rooms nobody studied, from people who thought you were too young to be taking any of it in. And it moved from them into you exactly the way it moved through those 3-year-olds in that Stanford lab. Without instruction, without reward, without a single moment where you chose to keep it. You didn't decide how to be angry. You didn't decide how to go quiet, or how to leave a room, or how to react when something gets taken from you. You watched it, and you filed it. And at some point, without noticing, you started doing it. The last time you got angry the way you always get angry, you weren't deciding anything. You were performing something that was already in there. Absorbed in a room you've mostly forgotten, from a person who had no idea you were watching that carefully. They never did either.